Hello, everybody, and thank you again for joining me for another episode of Dentistry Beyond the Numbers, and I am Dr. Marc Liechtung. I've been thinking a lot about what has gone on in the last several episodes and things we spoke about. The truth of the matter is that I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying letting my knowledge grow and hearing people ask me great questions and maybe even helping people. It's been a great run, and I want to continue, but I thought I'd take a step back. Last week I spoke about selling in your 40s, your 50s, and your 60s, and how it would mean to you. For those of you that think they know me, great. For those of you that know me, even better. But for those of you that don't know what I've accomplished, we all make mistakes in life. I just felt like I wanted to let you know about some of the experiences, a lot of the experiences I've undertook and successfully acquisitioned in my career, whether it be product, dental practices, groups. And I thought it would help you, the listener, and you, the doctor, and the team, that you know where I'm coming from. I'm coming from a situation where after 25 years of chairside dentistry in New York City in the Upper West Side and Lincoln Center, it taught me a tremendous amount. And when I got into dental school, I really loved the science of dentistry. I loved the art of dentistry. I really took to dentistry. But it's when I owned my own practices and I saw the transformation of me as a clinician during the day and a businessman at night. And that's when I started to think of needs. And just to take you back in 2010, maybe 2008, I had this idea. People were coming into the office. We were selling unbelievable treatment plans, but through our marketing, we were also getting people that couldn't afford our dentistry through the marketing. We would offer them, like we do now, a lot of implants, great periodontal treatment, cosmetics. They would come in, we'd give them an offer, we'd give them a treatment plan, and they would not be able to accept it. This is a story I told back when I was acquired, and that was that it really came to me when I was helping my grandmother through a time of crisis, that I had to literally carve an acrylic bridge in her nursing home for a whole day. And I thought of this product called Snap-on Smile. And I only bring this up now because this is, believe me, a whole podcast unto itself. But Snap-on Smile was an amazing, multi-purpose, non-invasive, removable appliance. It is still made out of crystallized acetyl resin, and it helps many, many different types of people. But it also helped people get to the next step of dentistry, show them what they could look like, how they could chew. Was it a temporary, was it a long-term provisional, or was it to some people maybe their last stop? I didn't know. But back in 2011, 2012, the Denmat Corp came calling, and they were owned by a bank, and they came with my investors at the time, and they convinced me to sell the product. So in essence, that was really the first major sale I really had, in that I felt like the bankers and all of them were coming down, and we I bought some practices, but this was pretty serious. And what it did do is it allowed me, Snap-on, to travel the world and see dentists from all over and learn different techniques. When I came back, I put my effort into growing my Lincoln Center office in Manhattan Dental Arts on Broadway and 68th Street in Manhattan. It's a love to me. And it's probably the most important asset of my life, in that that's the office I developed a quality appliance known as Snap-on Smile. And when I got back from Snap-on Smile, the practice was doing about $3.5 million. And a quick story, I had an associate with me for 8 years. I had no idea what happened, but for any reason, not to get into it, I got a text when I was with my wife one day that I left my resignation on your desk. After 8 years, I got a letter saying that she left, and she took staff. And I was devastated. I was doing $3.4 million, $3.5 million at the time. And I do get devastated. I don't know if any of you get devastated, but I take it home. I take it into my bed. I think about it. I ponder about it. I come up with a solution, hopefully. But here's the chance that I didn't know if I had a solution. A very big producer left the practice and left it aggressively. I did not go after her legally. I decided not to. The biggest reason was I hired a lawyer. And after 3 months of deciding and getting, the lawyer asked me, what are your damages? I said, damages? We're up on an annual basis of over $1 million. In the first year that doctor left us after 8 years, and my panic, we did $4.7 million. So what were my damages? So here I had a great practice on the Upper West Side, doing phenomenal numbers, and a large DSO came calling. And the DSO, when the practice was annualizing, doing $4.9 million, offered me 10 or 15% over gross. That was a lot of money. I mean, here I am, young, a family, and I was more or less in my 40s. And it was a young family, and I said to my wife, I said, this is a lot of money, and I could go on and build a group somewhere else. We were moving to Jersey. I said, let me look in Jersey. I had a license. And I went ahead with the acquisition, and I went ahead begrudgingly. But I had a group in New Jersey that I started cultivating. And as soon as the practice in Manhattan started to be sold, I started to ramp up my desire to grow a small group in Jersey and in Brooklyn. A couple of years later, true to form, another 2 groups came calling. And this is an amazing story. I mean, the groups came calling, 2 very viable DSOs. One today is thriving, and one today is no longer. And of course, my decision after going with one or the other or the other or the other was I picked the one that eventually dissolved. What it did do is give me a tremendous experience. First of all, they looked at my group as 4 dots on a board. Really didn't matter how much we were grossing. It was viable. Each one had a staff. Each one had a lease. Each one was doing some numbers. They calculated the gross. They gave me a number. It was nice. I didn't love that group. It was very short stay, and I sold it for a good number. And subsequently, I sold it to this group that really wasn't sure of which way they wanted to go. It was a DSO with about 35, 40 practices, and they were growing. Loved the guys that ran it. But I didn't feel like meeting the C-suite in Chicago. They had a really firm understanding of how to grow a dental business and practices. They bought a group of practices. They asked my opinion. I said not to buy it. They bought it anyway, and that became their demise. That practice with 14 or 15 offices wasn't worth anything, and I thought it was all a scam, but, from a practice standpoint. But the bottom line was I had a clause in my contract, and I thought about how to get out of this. I had a clause in my contract that when the CEO would get fired, I had the option to leave. Well, sure enough, I got a call one morning from the CEO saying, Dr. Marc, I loved working with you, but I think I'm being terminated. I immediately called my lawyer and said, exercise my out. I'm leaving. And I did. And as I'm leaving that group, I want to just give you an idea of time because it gets confusing. It was about 2018, 2019, right before COVID. And as it was just happening, I got a call from the group that bought my Manhattan Dental Arts office. And I would get a report, and they went from 4.9 to annualizing between 1.6 and 1.8. That's how they destroyed this beautiful 7-chair practice in the west side of Manhattan. And they called me up and they asked me to meet. They said, Dr. Marc, let's have lunch at the place we always met. I met with them, and they asked me how I want to do this. They want me to come back to work because I did my contract for a year and I left. And they said, we need you to build the practice up. And I said, I'm not going to build the practice up. I'm not going to work for a group anymore. Then they said, well, Doc, what are we going to do? And in my pocket, I had a check. And I took out the check for the exact number that I wanted to buy it back from them. And I told them what I would like right at lunch. I told them, you paid me in excess of 5.2. I'm going to buy it back for $475,000. And they laughed, and they took a break, and they went outside, and he made a phone call. And as he came back, he said, when can you close? I said, I could close right now. And I bought back my practice, which was one of the greatest things for me. It was doing 1.8. I bought it back for 8% of what they paid me. And the following year, we built it to $3.9 million. That is not any magic sauce. That is not any excessive marketing. That is just caring and doing quality work and bringing back the patients and treating them a lot better than that particular group of people that dental DSO brought in would be better. And subsequently, I built it up. And I ended up, true to form, like I am, I'll buy a couple of more. And I ended up buying 4 more during the course of COVID, taking an opportunity. And I'm getting to my point, everybody. I want you to get a little history about Dr. Marc Liechtung. And then when I put those 5 together, I built them up pretty quickly to be the best group I've ever owned in 2.5, 3 years. Well, 2 years. And after 2.5 years of owning them and building them up and having really good presence, a company that I work for now, proudly, Guardian Dentistry Partners, came calling. and they evaluated it totally in a different way. And I'm going to get into where I'm going now. I subsequently sold my practices, or a major part of my practice. I'm still a partner and I'm a managing partner, but I wasn't the chief clinical officer like I was before. And rightly so, because they have a great team and I'm very happy with the team. I sold my practice. I became managing partner in my region. And the region now has, just since they bought me, we acquired 13 offices. We are doing phenomenally well. But what I want to bring you is during these transactions, it could get confusing. All right, he's telling us what he did. No. What I'm telling you is, I look back after all these transactions and I see what has transpired. I'm looking at the first one when I sold Manhattan Dental Arts. It was strictly gross revenue. Nice office, long, good lease, stable doctor ready to work. That's a percentage of our gross. So what I want to explain to you now is that what we're looking for, and why I said 40s, 50s, and 60s, is because 20 years ago, the way they evaluated practices was totally different than 5 years ago or 6 years ago, and that's totally different than today. And the groups have changed, and they're changing again. I had a lot of transactions in my life. I bought practices, I bought charts, and we're going to do a podcast on the advantages of buying records around your neighborhood. It's phenomenal. Same lease. And so I bought a lot of things, and I would like to believe I carefully bought them. Years ago, we looked at your gross. You come in with a $5 million, $2 million, $1 million, $500,000 gross. We would evaluate your capital expenditures. We would evaluate your staff and the revolving door of staff. We evaluate your succession plan. If we come in and you're a 75-year-old doctor, do you have an associate? Will you give up some of your hours to bring on an associate? Back then, that was a question. But what they paid you was a percentage of your 1 year's gross revenue. So if you did $1 million and you had a nice practice, good location, long lease, and a stable doctor, you'd get 80% of your gross, $800,000. Years later, you would get still that percentage of gross, but if you were a doctor like I was and you had a couple of dots on the board where you owned other practices, you would have the opportunity to cash in a little more, because what practices or groups, DSOs, were doing were putting stuff on a board, and the more dots on a board, the better they were. There, they would build it, but if they didn't build it, they would just buy more to circumvent the losses, to make the balance sheet to the board much better and looking better, because we got 200 practices instead of 189 that are failing, or a couple have failed. So that would be their tune. More dots, more money. But like anything, the groups have gotten so much smarter. And today, they've entered that word of EBITDA, earnings before depreciation, interest, taxation, amortization. EBITDA, our drop dead, we talked about it before, drop dead operational profit. What that means is, that means clearly that if you take $1 million practice and you take everything out, marketing, rent, staff, doctor's pay. Doctor produced $800,000. Take out the $300,000 that would take to replace him. So right now you come in with an EBITDA of $250,000. Let's say $200,000. You're running a pretty good ship at 20% of your gross revenue. 2 years ago, before the interest rates went up, you may get 6 times. You may get a 1.2, 1.4 buy. But today, you're probably looking at $1 million, $1.1 million. It's probably going to land in the 5X range. But the difference I'm pointing out is today, they evaluate everything. They don't evaluate just how your practice is running, but in the next 3 to 5 years, are we going to have to change the chairs? How is the compressor? How's the air conditioning system? And that is why today's world is probably the most sensible way of buying a practice. All I wanted to do today was to bring in these tidbits, but also to say that, when you go through it like I went through it, you realize the changing of the guard. The interesting thing is, when I sold Manhattan Dental Arts, they liked it because I had multi-specialty. I had a root canal specialist. I had a periodontist doing the surgery. But today, like we spoke about, groups like it if you have what I called, and I keep terming, super general dentist or the super generalist. Think about it. If we're building a business today and we have great surgeons who are called periodontists, or great surgeons that took a real liking and a penchant for surgery and really took great courses for that area. These doctors, for the most part, are being paid at 35%. Specialists are being paid at 50%. If someone could put in an implant that they're getting $2,000 for, they make $700. The office makes, after everything is done, 15% more in their pocket. And the doctor is doing more work because they don't have to put chair to chair. So it works out that there's more dentistry done by a super generalist than if you have to refer out or refer over to another room to a periodontist. So the transformation of dentistry has been amazing. If you think about it, and I do a lot. I mean, I think about it, and this is a very serious topic for me because I've seen the changing of the guard. Now we're talking about dentistry and technology and AI and Pearl and diagnosing. Will that go with the younger teams, younger doctors? Probably. The older docs are probably set in their way. So the transformation is going to be again. What's interesting about our profession is there's so much to keep up on. And what I said at the beginning, that I really took a liking to dentistry, it's because there's so much to learn. You know, for those of you that play golf, you have 14 clubs in your bag. Sooner or later, over time, you try to get comfortable with each one. Not that I'm the best golfer, but I golf. And I always looked at them as tools. You know, you're looking at them as tools. Can I hit the 7-iron better than I hit the 9-iron? Maybe I just hit the 9-iron and be in the game. Maybe I just learn what I learn, use technology to the extent, but I'm in the game. Maybe I button up my books and make sure that my EBITDA is above 15, 18%. And as we discussed last time, get ready for the sale. How do I do that? Look at your lab costs. Look at the cleaning supplies. Look at your dental supplies. Look at the things that you could term low-hanging fruit. And if you take 4 or 5 or 6 and you would really acknowledge them, you could be deducting or increasing by 3, 4, 5% of your EBITDA, which is a game changer when you go to sell. You know, there's a few things I wanted to mention, and that is that the metrics, we talked about it, right? We talked about the EBITDA, but also operational efficiency. I mean, are you at 18% of dental supplies, or are you at 7? Is your labs under control, or they're out of whack? Groups today and buyers today don't want to come in and remedy the situation. They want to come in and enhance the situation. And these are the ways we look at things. We look at things on how we can enhance them. Snap-on was responding to a problem. The problem of my patients saying no to expensive and extensive treatment. Once they get comfortable, they advance to more treatment. Learning your practice allows you to have better results, a better exit, more work-life balance, because you're going to structure it in a way that your insurance is paying 99% plus on everything if you're taking insurance. If not, your collections are 99% plus, and even better. Your new patients are flowing on a consistent basis. These are the things. Staff costs are down. These are the things we must look at. And that's what we're going to get into. Today, I wanted to give you sort of like a little bit of you getting to know me a little bit. I love dentistry, as I said. I practiced it. But it's the aspect of building a business within what we know that really, really gets me excited. And I really do love hearing about doctors that are approaching something. Maybe they want to acquire a practice in their neighborhood, what to do. My feeling is we've all been there. There's so many people that I call the best, and they could share with the rest. And I think it's key. That's what this is about. Whether you pick something up today or not, whether you say, wow, that guy's telling us what we need, what he did. No, I'm not telling you what I did. I'm telling you what I did as it relates to something either you're doing, could do, will do, or have done, and evaluate it. Of course, if you need help, advice, and you want to ask a quick question, send me a text, shoot me a link. But this is the future for us, building our businesses and then selling them. And I see so many people, like I discussed last week, in their 40s, selling their business like I did and advance to the groups. I was really captivated by the group of dentistry. I wanted to be a leader and teaching doctors how to be great. And that's what happened. So in closing, this is sort of like a catch-up. Sort of wanted to tell you a little bit about Dr. Marc Liechtung and Dentistry Beyond the Numbers and why I'm doing it. It's not an ego thing. I just love to talk about dentistry and to embark my knowledge wherever it's needed if I could help. I sit in on a lot of meetings. I'm blessed to be working with a lot of smart people. A shout out to my regional team in New York City. They are amazing. And other people I work with every day. But I will say that the truth of the matter is when you find good quality people, you stick with them. And I've been lucky to do that. So evaluate what you're doing. Evaluate where you want to go. Not every transaction that sounds so wonderful was so wonderful. They were hard. So I don't want you to think this was a piece of cake. And remember, if you're doing something and everybody's doing it, then it's easy, right? Everybody is not doing it. I had a lot of transactions. We have a lot to learn. Dentistry Beyond the Numbers will keep going. And as I promised, we're scheduling our fall interviews, marketing, advancement, different products, different procedures are coming along, things that could advance our practices and things you want to know about and why the doctor created that in dentistry. It's sort of something I should have done last week, but I was away with some friends, dental friends, and I found out that a dear friend and one of the most, most forward-thinking general dentist he was a surgical dentist I've ever met. In the short period of time I knew him, he captivated me. He was a wonderful clinician that probably had the most productive, highest efficient 5-chair practice in the world. And I want to just say, rest in peace, Dr. Rick Klein. In the short time I knew you, I learned so much. I would love to have you on the program because we all would have learned a lot. I want to say thank you again to joining me on Dentistry Beyond the Numbers. This was a little bit of an emotional session for me to bring up my past and try to tell you my past of acquisitions and try to embark on you that the groups are not something to be afraid of. The groups are something you can embrace. And you get the right group, it took me 1 or 2, but to get the right group, you can really learn a lot, grow a lot. We're going to see you next week on Dentistry Beyond the Numbers. My name is Dr. Marc Liechtung. I'll see you there. Thank you.